as explained before, during this semester, we will be using the Adobe Animate development environment. Now, this is one of many development environments that we can work with in order to produce media, interactive media for multimedia. The Adobe Animate environment, it's basically a core program. And what I mean by that is one of those programs that allows you to export several different types of media depending on different targets that you're trying to hit. Mainly web development, app development, animation. And depending on what your target is, then you can export either WebGL documents or ActionScript documents or HTML5 documents. Now, the core of this semester will be focused on HTML5 and ActionScript. ActionScript is the base programming language for this environment. That is the native format of the program. It comes to us from the Flash technology, and as you probably have heard, platforms like Google and others are planning to stop supporting this environment by the end of this year, by the end of 2020. That is to say, only on the web browser. So only the Flash player on the web browser will stop being supported as of December of 2020. That said, the technology itself doesn't go away. And the reason for that is because, like I said before, the program allows you to create a myriad of things that you can work on based on the actual program itself. So not only does it work for doing web development, and as a matter of fact, originally the program was not intended to do web development. It was an animation program. But because of the flexibility it offered, a lot of people did development on the program for web. And so it sort of deviated from its original intent. Now, you could still use it for self-contained programs, that is executable files or actual programs that you can run on desktops. You can use it for prototyping, for mobile environments. You can use it for animation. So there's a lot of uses still for the program outside of just its web development portion. So the program is not going to go away. Number one. Number two, ActionScript3 language is an actual programming language. It's a full-blown programming language. It's not just native to this program. It is a language on its own. So it's an actual object-oriented programming language, or OOP, object-oriented programming language, just like JavaScript. So, and as a matter of fact, they follow the exact same format. They're close cousins in terms of languages. And if you learn one or the other, you're one step away from learning the other. So it is a good stepping stone into learning how to work with programming, and we will see this later in the semester. Now, what is the difference between an ActionScript3 document and an HTML5 document? Well, let's go ahead and create a couple of files. Let me go ahead and create one first. And I'm going to create a file that is by default under character animation. I'm going to choose standard 640 by 480. And under the details, I am going to choose ActionScript3. Now, this is just going to be an ActionScript3 standard file, nothing else added to it. I'll go ahead and click OK, and this brings the stage for that particular file with its own timeline. Now, with that done, I am going to create a little rectangle here using the rectangle tool. And this rectangle, it's just a shape. As you see, when I select it, the properties tells me it's just a shape. There's nothing attached to that. Now, with this done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this file, and I'm going to call it box. You will notice that the file format for whatever I am saving out of the Adobe Animate is .fla. So anytime we talk about .fla, we're talking about Adobe Animate environments or programs. So we'll just go ahead and click Save on this. And now, with that saved, what's going to happen is anytime I test a movie, anytime I compile the program, this is going to create a file for me that I can actually send to someone, post on the web, or create as a self-contained animation if necessary. The way to test or compile any of the programs you're working on is by going under Control, Test, and you can either test the actual program entirely, you can test targeting where you're going, or you can test a scene. Now, you'll notice that by default, when we start, we work on something called Scene 1. we can have as many scenes as we need to have, and they will play sequentially. But for our intents and purposes for this class, we probably won't have more than one scene in our programs. So I'm just gonna, by the way, anytime I say I'm using interchangeably the word program and the word movie clip and the word movie when I refer to the file that we're working on when we're creating FLA files. The reason for this is because in the environment we can do so many things and move in so many different directions, target so many different outputs that it's interchangeable. You can call a flash movie a flash program or a movie clip, or they're all interchangeable. So keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do, notice that there's a shortcut for it called Control Enter, or on the Mac it's a Command Return shortcut. And if you do that, you basically create an actual output or a render or a compile of the program. You'll notice the name for that is the name of the movie, that the file that you're working on, at .swf. SWF or SWF file is the file format that outputs directly from an ActionScript environment. So when you're working with ActionScript, when you output, you will be outputting a SWF file. Now that actually is a file. So let's go to the desktop really quick, and this is my box FLA file that I had just saved, and here is the box SWF file that I just created. So if I double click on this, you will notice that I have the actual file as a file. This is an actual file that I can go ahead and email to someone, and provided that they have the Flash player in their machine, they should be able to see my file, whether it is an animation or whether it's something static like what you just saw. Let me go ahead and close this, and I'm going to create a new file. Again, I'm going to create a new file, but this time using the exact same settings, I will be using HTML5 instead of ActionScript 3.0. So HTML5 or Canvas is something that targets web development. Now, when I do this and I click Create, you will notice that it creates a stage with a timeline, and nothing changed on my environment. Nothing is different. The only difference is literally the main difference is that one uses one scripting language, AS3, and that is the default Animate environment, and the other one uses HTML5/JavaScript, which is for web development. So you could literally create prototypes or animations or even interactivity with HTML5 and JavaScript within this environment. So in this case, what I want to do, you'll notice that my name is untitled Canvas, and you'll notice that it says Canvas in parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and I'm going to save it as circle. You will also notice right now that the name on the file is still FLA. So while in the native environment, whether you're working with WebGL, Canvas, or AS3, ActionScript 3, your file will always be an FLA while working on the native format. It will always save as a flat file, FLA. Okay, so let me go ahead and save that. And this time, instead of a rectangle, I'm going to create a circle. And this circle, again, it's a shape, as you can see under the properties. I am going to export this, and you'll notice something slightly different. When I click Control Return or Control Enter, you will notice that it opened up a web browser for me. It created a web browser with a 127.0.0.1 and then colon and something else. That is an internal server that comes installed with the actual Animate environment. So you have the ability to preview things as they would be if you were to send them to the web. So this is just literally by testing, I created that into a web page, and this actually is a drawing in the web page. Let me go to my folder, and you'll notice that doing that test created a circle web page. With it comes attached a JS file or a JavaScript file. So you actually have the ability to this by simply testing it created all that environment for you. If I were to take these two documents and place them on a web server, then you would be able to see this from a website, literally by just simply dropping these two things onto a web server. So these two files are created by testing, and you'll notice that they basically create a sample or open up a web a browser window, a tab, and display whatever it is that you had created in that environment. So that is the basic difference between ActionScript 3 and HTML5 from the Animate perspective. They're both languages that we can use to create the interactivity within our environments. When it comes to animation, the environment will give us the ability to create an either or. And what that means is you can create an animation based on ActionScript 3 with no interactivity and no language, no coding in the actual program that you're creating. And you can simply save it and export it out as an HTML5 document or convert it into an HTML5 document if you so desire. So there's a lot of flexibility on your workflow because you're not stuck with one single linear way of working. And as a matter of fact, this gives you the ability to create more than one output. So if you are targeting AS3 and you decide halfway through the animation that you're going to make it HTML5, or you might want to maintain both, you can go ahead and develop everything that is animation only, no coding, just animation, all the way to the end, and then simply export it as an HTML5 document. When it comes to animation, it's fairly simple because animations are just that, animations. They're linear, they work on their own timelines, and they export as an animation. When it comes to coding, that's where the significant differences start between HTML5 and ActionScript. ActionScript is the native format for Animate, and it's a scripting language of its own, much like JavaScript. And HTML5 will create its own environment on Canvas with support from JavaScript. So no ActionScript on that end of things. And so there are two completely separate environments and with two completely separate targets when it comes to actual coding and on either or.